For the last few months, I've had my eyes set on a creator by the name of Tosca. Not for any malicious reason, I should add. I was originally looking to review and discuss some of their avatars for my YouTube channel. If you're unfamiliar with who this Tosca might be, they're an artist who creates 3D avatars for platforms such as VRChat, each one having a $30 price tag across the board, alongside a very solid community. This is what makes their models rather popular for both users and content creators alike. Combine this with the fact many of my Neos VR friends constantly wear their models, and it seemed like the perfect choice for a potential video review. Although, as the months went by, I began noticing some rather questionable practices with their models, from making people pay full price for updates that aren't a complete redoing of the model, discounts meant for previous buyers with stipulations so most can actually use them, and much, much more. It also doesn't help that this is all on top of a strict refund policy that many 3D avatar creators use. Of course, the lack of refund isn't exclusive to Tosca. Many understand that with it being a digital good, refunds are out of the question. The problem is that this is a refund policy being used alongside a much bigger issue, as these updates are a separate listing from the original, while the original listing is usually left at the base $30 price tag and no notice that it's outdated, meaning it's very much possible to buy the wrong version without meaning to. All of these issues mixed together in such a way that the buyer was at a disadvantage, being forced into a situation where they have to rebuy the product at full price if they wish to continue receiving updates, or be left with an outdated mess you would need to update yourself. There's also the fact that these updates were originally a matter of popularity and how old the model was, meaning the model might never receive a new update if it doesn't sell well in the artist's eyes, or if they themselves don't like their older works and didn't want to go anywhere near it, usually leading to either waiting for a miracle down the line or to commission the artist yourself, which has its own issues which we'll get into much later into the video. However, I'm sure it's clear at this point that there are a lot of problems with these practices. Gathering all the info I could from public sources and previous buyers, I eventually made a video presenting the issues at hand in the hopes of seeing things addressed, since there isn't much of a way for buyers to share their voice through Gumroad. Thankfully, the video did eventually reach Tosca, who quickly responded to the concerns while working to make some changes, relisting older models with a price reduction, and even marking them as obsolete. I genuinely believe Tosca is an awesome 3D avatar creator in my opinion, having produced some very solid looking models for a low price tag compared to other options. However, good looking models can't exactly help from bad business practices. And while this was only a remedy for one of the 3 issues I presented, it's a rather nice start. And for that reason, that should have been where things ended. They would continue to work on better practices while I prepared a review of one of their models. Unfortunately, it seems as if my video has opened up some old wounds for a small group of individuals. 30 minutes after Tosca responded to the video, I was approached on Twitter by someone offering information. Curious, I showed interest as I was wondering what sort of information they were referring to. The information in question were various claims of Tosca's more egregious actions, from scamming numerous people out of model retextures and custom model commissions, to stealing assets from other creators without credit, permission, or even payment. And as more of this information was told, more individuals approached me with much similar info, showing me that this has been an apparent issue for the past few years. With everything I've been told so far, I felt I had enough to touch on the topic. This, my friends, is the xTosca files, the recent tellings of Tosca's shady actions. Before we get too deep into the video, I have some things I wish to address first. Allow me to make it clear that I do not have it out for Tosca in any way. As some of you familiar with my VRChat review series may know, I specifically review and discuss elements under the lens of a new user to the platform. This does mean there will be issues I may focus on that others likely won't see as a big deal. Regardless of how you might feel about this, there's still issues that do affect others in some way, and for this reason, I wish to help those trying to get into VRChat whenever I can. At least, I used to before VRChat decided to pull many dumb decisions. I guess it can't be helped at this point. Anyway, back on topic. This is partially the reason why I had made that standalone critique on Tosca, as I had been working on the script for my review of Tosca's Phoenix Redux, which is when I began noticing most of the script's runtime was taken up by this critique alone. Spending a majority of the video telling people how awesome the model is, before going on a 10-minute tirade about the business practices, doesn't seem really fun, especially as more questionable practices came out of the woodwork. I didn't want to make it seem as if the business practices ruined the model's quality, so I separated the critique into its own video in the hopes of referencing it in the review, allowing much more focus on expressing my genuine thoughts on the model at hand. My intentions were not to be rude, and I do apologize if it certainly felt like that. I mostly wish to ensure people were made aware of the issues that were present, especially when they can lead to a person potentially losing money. Also, while I may be blunt in my thoughts in regards to VR chat avatars, I'm not exactly an authority figure on what creators should or shouldn't do with their creations. Like all artists, Tosca has control over what they do with their products and prices. That doesn't mean shady practices shouldn't be called out, however. After all, platforms such as Gumroad don't support written reviews in the slightest. Therefore, it's very easy for bad experiences or issues to go unnoticed for many. And let's face it, a single star rating says very little as opposed to one's own thoughts on the model. And since most discussions related to avatars take place within servers owned by the creator, it's very easy for these concerns or criticisms to be washed away or deleted entirely, allowing only the good to stick and the creator to get away with their actions scot-free. This isn't true for all creators, of course, but it is something I hope others may think about with these videos, and may help to encourage more discussion on topics such as this. As for the reason I'm making this video specifically, this is a little different from what I normally create. The information many of these individuals have provided is quite concerning, which, if proven to be true, shows a dangerous side of Tosca as a creator. Thankfully, I have 7 individuals here sharing their stories with me today, with a few even providing files and additional elements to help prove their case, seeing as this is a topic that has been waiting to happen for many years. I will briefly mention that yes, every individual sharing their story today has been made anonymous, as I want to ensure none of these fine people are seeked out or pestered in any way. Some of these individuals also wouldn't have shared this info if it wasn't for this anonymity, since they could very much be tracked down by others or even the artists themselves. If you find this an absolute deal breaker on trusting anything within this video, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to believe everything these individuals share here as fact, and there is already enough public evidence that shows some of Tosca's other actions. All I can really do is relay the details that others were kind enough to share with me. Although, I do hope that everyone understands that beneath these fake names are people who have been affected in some way. Not just random commissioners, but also fellow VR chat creators who are well known in the community. People who have put lots of time and effort into their own model creations, having produced an amazing amount of content and assets for people to utilize, only to end up entangled in Tosca's shady actions one way or another. I merely wish to stress this fact now in the event that others may use this anonymity to claim everything is fake. The only one who can potentially claim everything is false is the artist in question, Tosca. All that we can do is come up with our own conclusions on what to believe. With that in mind, let's begin with our first individual of today, having approached me on Twitter with all the info they had on Tosca and other affected parties. For the sake of not getting lost when I start mentioning other individuals, let's call them Zane. Zane is a VR chat creator who has made some amazing avatars and assets. Alongside this, they've been in the same community as Tosca for many years, something that definitely checks out given their knowledge on most of their actions. They haven't been directly affected by Tosca like the other individuals in this video. However, they are one of the more knowledgeable ones on Tosca's past, which is exactly why they wanted to present the info they had on Tosca's actions over the years. Yet, they were worried they wouldn't really have much credit due to their previous behavior. So when they came across my video, they wanted to see if I would handle the torch instead, leading to us performing Discord calls where we would discuss certain topics. This would not only add a lot more weight to this individual's involvement, but allow them to share information that couldn't normally be done with text alone, hence why this individual has the most content in their section. The first bit of info they shared was the fact Tosca scammed many individuals out of $400, something I was slightly aware of, but not to the degree they explained to me during the call. You might remember this is something I briefly alluded to in my previous video. Now at this point, I could go into more details regarding other concerns surrounding Tosca, such as the quality of some of their previous commissions, or even their social media behavior. For anyone unfamiliar with custom models, especially those made for VR chat, they are not cheap. Most creators price these high into the $800 to $1,000 range for good reason. They aren't just sculpting a 3D model from scratch, they're rigging it to make it work with various platforms. A $400 custom model commission seems interesting, but not too far off if handled properly, especially if the commissioner is aware of the quality they're getting for that price. Though, as we'll see later in this video, that is far from the case. The next topic we eventually focus on was Tosca's modeling work. Zane goes on to stress that they show a lot of inexperience with certain aspects, relying on certain tricks or features that most VR chat creators know are not correct. It's one of the reasons there has been a large rumor regarding their models being edited Shibas. For reference, the Shiba is a VR chat avatar originally created by Pika. It's one of the earliest VR chat avatars made for the platform, and its age shows. In fact, Tosca's history began editing these avatars as noted by this rumor, which eventually escalated to the point that Tosca made a Twitter thread tackling this rumor, posting pictures of the wireframes of both their pupper model and Pika Shiba, even going as far as to make a YouTube video with Pika themselves saying this rumor isn't true.
Yeah.
So, Tosca, I hear you're getting a lot of flack on Twitter for something.
It's rather nice to see a lot of effort being taken to tackle this rumor. However, I have my doubts about the validity of all this, and most of it stems from what others have been saying. The part about quote-unquote stealing the Shiba is perfectly fine though. I mean, Pika shows within the video they're quite alright with all of this, and if the artist confirms they're alright with it, more power to them.
Not one person who's been arguing with you has ever decided to contact me on Twitter.
Yeah.
Not one person. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've
It's
proven...
kind of stupid. Even then, when you made the cat model by just warping the features of the Shiba, remember you still had where it's like the color of the cat was still in the substance painter file. It looked like a Shiba. That's a completely new model, apparently. I mean, they used my base, but they turned it into a cat. That's impressive.
Yeah.
So,
as for whether this rumor is true or not, it can be tricky to confirm. Thankfully, with Zane being a 3D artist, they can look into this topic for us, culminating in a 15-minute long interview as we analyze Tosca's previous and newer works. I'll play some parts of it today, and leave the full video in the description below.
Hello there. Okay. Sadly, there's no really good way to 100% prove the legitimacy of the claims. But just like any court, you can quickly have enough evidence to kind of prove it. One of the bigger evidence is there is no 3D artist out there that has no proof whatsoever of making something from scratch. Any 3D artist you'll see either on Twitter, private, will always have work in progress. That's something we just don't have with Tosca. You'd usually have an almost done model, or sometimes nothing at all. You just have a model. Now, there is already a few models where you can find practically identical situations. This one is a very good one. You have her, I think it's a wolf dog and one of the foxes. If you go, you might notice a lot of very close resemblance. If you look at the hands, right? You can see that the cuts, sometimes even the cuts are on the exact same. Look at this, 1, 1, 1. Look here, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. If you look here, you can follow certain positions perfectly between the two. One second. One of her newer models, which is the Popper, has a very good resemblance to the Tosca Shiba. A lot of people called it out back in the day, and it's kind of noticeable. It's kind of hard to see at this moment because it has a very bad way of kind of just pulled out vertices. But if you will really quickly reset it, and put them together, you might notice a lot of resemblance in a lot of regards. Is it 100% proof? No. Again, nothing to be proved early. A person can go and retopologize a model from scratch, any model out on the market, retopologize it from scratch and say I made it from scratch and copy the style. If you don't have the proof from the start to show it, especially as a modeler that's already being questioned, it kind of puts you on the spot. If you already know people don't believe you, why wouldn't you take pictures and show the process from 0 to 100? You can see a lot of resemblance in areas like the nose a lot of the time between her. Is it retopologized? By the way, adding retopology means rebuilding of the mesh around the original mesh, trying to keep the original style while making them more optimized. And if you look over here in the retopology, they have changes, but you can see very similar acts in front of the original Shiba. Well, the edited original Shiba. Shapes that makes a lot of sense. You can look at noses and see that a lot of the shapes usually follow the same regard. Cat is not out of the line of fire over here in that regard. What we're trying to say is, no, this, let's say, is not a Shiba, or this is not a Shiba, but this is an edit of an edit of an edit of a Shiba. So if you put them on stage, but sadly we were not able to get those, you'll be able to see how practically kind of like evolution. You'll have the basic monkey, and then the monkey that's closer to human, and closer and closer and closer until you get the human. Are we able to prove it perfectly? No, because again, retopologizing a model and just saying it's a different model is 100% opportunity, but that's on the modeler side to prove, here, I made it, especially when you know you're already controversial. If you already know that and you outright don't show anything, and you only show ended result, that kind of puts you on a weird spot, isn't it? Main idea is this. We know again that some of the bodies are stolen. You can see a lot of the shapes have a lot of similarities. Again, the main idea is I can always go and retopologize a model and change whatever I want. If I want the legs to be a bit smaller, I can go and I can do this, right? And I can say I made it from scratch, right? I can then go and retopologize it and change the way that the mesh looks, right? Then think about like the lines going, right? And I can change something and say, okay, it's a different model. It doesn't mean that you can't see a lot of very specific ways of going, right? If you want to tell me that a person that made this from scratch, right? You have a problem. There is a lot of proof stack, and her very illegitimate background really helps hold it off.
It's like, but it's this proof that makes it very easy to kind of understand what's actually going on.
Exactly. You need to connect the dots. Now, I'm not gonna say definitively sitting in front of you, she does that. But the fact that she has a very problematic background, the fact that she does very, very weird and very usually not good choices related to her models, from broken armatures, broken weight paint, problematic vertices, all of the above, UVs. The choice of making her models, one of the problems with her models is that her fur is pulled out as part of the model. Now given, that means you can use the original texture, but that means you also stretch textures, which is usually not something that you want to do. So it's a lot of stuff. It's stuff related to the fact that we know she stole parts from other people. So it's that and that and that and that. And in fact, more importantly, she has no proof from the start of the making of the model. When you make a model, you'll have parts, you have the work in progress. You start with the legs, the hands, doesn't matter. She has none. It all stacks together, you're starting having a proof. Could it all be a coincidence? Maybe, but it would be very hard to nudge to that way, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it's been very difficult to try to pass this off as just like a misunderstanding of sorts, but as more and more of this information comes together, it just hurts to try to like keep that together. It just can't. It's like the Tenga tower just, coming apart. Like it's gonna topple over, and the base is weakening.
Yep, more or less. Again, very sad for me to say this because in my eyes, she is a pretty good creator, right?
I agree too.
Gets to design. she has an eye for design, and that's the reason all models is successful. Even if the problem is the background, the design is wonderful. The
good art from a bad person. And you also got the
Exactly.
business practices too, which have been something I've definitely noticed quite a bit, especially with their recent ones.
I'm not telling her how to live her life or how to sell. At the end of the day, as sad as it is to say, if somebody buys your stuff, right? If somebody will buy your stuff, then you are worth it. I'm saying it with a big quote unquote. At the end of the day, that is true. But still having some kind of resemblance of care and not putting people in a bad spot is true. And it's a big problem when so much stuff pile up. So many people know the problem, right? It's very hard to kind of class everything again as a maybe. A lot of our models have a very, very big resemblance to each other. Again, certain parts, as I shown before, you can literally show how they're identical. Even from commission models, known parts from stolen parts, a lot of stuff that kind of show you how something is wrong and something is weird about the model. It's a repetitive situation. I'll be the first one to hope, and like with all my heart, it wasn't true, but you just can't ignore it. And again,
It's something that only
yeah.
Tosca herself can come out and try to disprove.
exactly.
she's the
but thing
artist.
is, as an artist, if I was an artist like that and I wanted to disprove, I would work. Let's say I work on a new model. I will show literally the works in progress. I will show, look, I am making this from scratch. I will take as many pictures. I will make time-lapse videos. Bigger artists than her do time-lapse videos, not only to show people how they work, but also, here, look, I made it. That's my proof. It's always nice to have, right?
Yes, the lack of transparency really hurts you. Not like
There's
originally.
no transparency at all. That's the main problem.
Yes. Yeah, it feels at first it feels like a case of like maybe they're afraid of just showing their hand or something like that, but it's like with their business practices and their lack of like helping others, the transparency is starting to become an issue, and this is one of those issues.
Main idea. I'm not the guy to just go out and call it, but you can't ignore evidence that keeps piling up, especially with her bad background. A person that would be legitimate would not have that level of background and problem. So,
Yeah, especially when it means 7 individuals, yourself included, have approached me looking to see this all written out, like the spell on the video.
not including that supposedly there are many more. That just
Yes.
don't want to come out of that. So, yeah, that's the main idea.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
No problem, anytime.
The conclusion is that while there is evidence to back up this claim, it's difficult to confirm 100%. These are 3D models after all, with lots of details to consider. As a result, we have to decide for ourselves on what we think. Thanks to Zane though, the seeds were planted to gather more individuals on the matter, which is where the other 6 individuals of today come into play. Our next one even being another model creator of sorts. Graham, our next individual, is a VR chat creator just like Zane and Tosca, having made a few popular models that a number of users are definitely familiar with. From what I've been told, Tosca attempted to resell a modified version of one of their models. I, unfortunately, can't show the model in question as it is identifying information. But, let it be known that this is a model that has nearly 1,000 purchases in total, so for Tosca to try and steal it from this creator without asking for permission is rather bold. Thankfully, this was quickly handled once Graham was made aware and asked them to stop. Although, this does reveal a pattern that will become quite prevalent with other situations. Tosca only stopping herself when at risk of getting in trouble or losing money. Anyhow, there isn't really much else to speak on regarding this situation. Tosca was kind enough to stop when asked, which Graham respected. They were able to tell me the story of Tosca's Shiba retouch commissions though. In the past, Tosca scammed numerous individuals representing her commissions, with most of these commissioners being provided with a bad job or nothing at all. Something that likely took place early on given the lack of knowledge from others on this story. Graham here has definitely helped give an idea for Tosca's actions with commissioners, as well as how she isn't afraid to steal and reuse assets as needed. which will come in handy with our next individual who has quite the story. It's safe to say that Maverick, individual 3, is one that has been affected by Tosca the hardest, not only as commissioner, seeing as they didn't receive their commission in the end, but as someone who decided to help Tosca and received the worst for it. Maverick explains that Tosca's wolf and fox avatars had a broken seam. This wasn't just a simple texture issue, so they had to tinker with the model itself. In the end, Maverick gave Tosca a set of model parts and fixed the skin overall. Now, why exactly is this important, you might ask? Tosca would continue to use these assets for a majority of her later models, without giving credit to Maverick, and without even compensating them. The part of not receiving credit is important, as this was what Maverick had asked for, that if Tosca were to use these assets, to merely credit them when possible, especially as it would help this individual's name with the community they were in. Instead, nowhere on her pages does it say that the legs were made by Maverick, and my attempts to find any credits within the Discord or Twitter came up empty. Essentially, Tosca took credit for someone else's work for herself. So on top of potentially reusing Pika Shiba avatar as a basis, they're willing to reuse Maverick's leg assets to make the process easier. All of this to make money off of someone else's hard work. It's actually thanks to this detail that Maverick is able to add to the rumor that these are edited Shibas. Not just because they worked alongside Tosca to fix the wolf and fox Shiba edits, but because the legs used match up rather well with each other already. In fact, some models even use a hand asset that Maverick had given them, which explains why the poly count of the model is so high. It's meant for Blender animations or renders, not a VR chat avatar.
The one thing that I'll say that I know for a fact she remade by herself using a tutorial. She did talk about it on Twitter, and I can believe that is the hands. They are pretty badly made because they follow a tutorial that doesn't really does the job of what you need to do, if you can notice. They're pretty horrible. That is a proof for a person that doesn't know what he's doing and just kind of around. You would not make a model like this, right? This is actually a better example for how hands should be if you want to go for more low poly. So you could go higher poly than that. There are better options out there, right? But the main idea is just shoving a ton of topology, something like this, right? Is a proof of a person that doesn't know, just follow the tutorial blindly.
And remember, these are VR chat avatars. The goal is to have less of these, right?
Look at this hand just right now, just for a reference. This hand is almost 5,000 vertices. That's about 10,000 trees for this hand, okay? That is not something that somebody that's been making tens of models from scratch, may I add, would do. Look at this arm in front of this. Look at this leg in front of this, right? You can make your assumptions as much as you want, but if you want to tell me that the person that made, let's say, one second, let's go to the, there you go, this hand actually, excuse me, this hand is exactly the same problem. Let's go to the cat real quick. There you go, the cat is a good example. If you want to tell me that a person that made this from scratch, right? You have a problem.
It also feels like it's being added to the fact that these hands might have been taken from someone.
You can see over here how the arm is built and how like kind of soldered on. Look at this, how soldered on and kind of like glued together this hand is. Those are stuff you don't want to see on the model over here. Look at this. Stuff like that you just don't want to see on the model. Especially again when each hand is, let's see how on this model, this hand is 3,200. That means the hands alone on this model are almost 13,000 trees, right? For reference, the rest of the model is 32,000. So that means a third of that model is those hands. Okay? Her models are already not the best made because they're based on the Shiba, which is a questionable model. Again, it's an old model. It's from a person that was still learning the OLED back in the day.
It was the early days of VR chat, essentially.
It was the early days of VR chat. But if I go to one of the remade Shibas, right? One of the a la carte Shibas. This one is about 20,000 trees. right? She went ahead and probably subdivided, changed stuff, blah, 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 and went with this one to 45,000, right? Which again, the hands alone, if I'll take them more or less, are right now 6,000, so about 13,000. A third of the model is the hands. Why? Because she followed a tutorial that really wasn't meant to be followed for something like that. There's a lot of major problems related to stuff like that, and it's so advantageous to see, not advantageous, but so easy to see that this person is not a professional 3D artist, not a bad 3D artist. Respect where respect you do. She knows her design, which is very important. It's just sad to see her steal parts from other models, reuse other models, both in commissions and sold items, and calling them her own. How again, we be able to perfectly, without a question, without a doubt in this universe, say yes, she does that, no question? No.
And to add further insult to injury, when Maverick commissioned Tosca for a custom model, Tosca reused Maverick's leg assets within the commission like nothing ever happened. And for the second commission, Maverick received nothing at all. This brings up the concern of how much is Tosca willing to steal from others. Tosca was already found trying to resell Graham's avatar if it wasn't for them stepping in. Who knows what other models and assets are being used like this? It also makes you wonder how much of these models are truly made from scratch, seeing as they previously introduced model updates that were so large, they required previous buyers to pay full price to access these updates. Yet, these updates apparently don't mess with the hands or legs at all. Anyhow, as we can see thanks to Maverick, Tosca is not afraid to steal from others, even taking advantage of someone's support when all they asked for was credit. We also have on our hands the first individual who was scammed by Tosca's commissions. Unfortunately, they are not the last. Peyton here didn't have much in the way of pictures or chat logs. That's quite alright though. What they did have was even better. Peyton here was one of the individuals who commissioned Tosca for a custom 3D model. This is fortunately a commissioner who did receive something for their purchase. Emphasis on something, as it's very difficult to consider it a model given its current state. Yet this does mean we have a model to potentially analyze. After a bit of talking, they were able to send me the files so I could take a look at them with Zane. Though, it didn't take long before we noticed some glaring issues with the whole model. For starters, there was no Unity package included. This individual spent $400 on a custom VR chat model and didn't receive the Unity package for said model. For anyone unfamiliar with VR chat models, Unity packages are a must-have, especially for newer users to the platform. They allow the creator to set a Unity scene with a pre-configured avatar for use within VR chat. You just need to supply the additional assets like VRC SDKs or dynamic bones. You know, back when a lot of that stuff mattered. Peyton explains that when they attempted to fix the model themselves, they reached out to Tosca to ask for the rest of the files for the model. However, she refused to provide anything such as the Substance Painter file. Since this is a custom model commission, the commissioner should receive all relevant files with no questions asked. Furthermore, Peyton wasn't told the shaders or assets they needed for the model, leaving the individual with a half-broken mess, figuratively and literally. The cherry on top of all of this is that Tosca begged Peyton for even more money, likely due to the goods and service fees that the payments presented. Yet, they still weren't interested in giving them the necessary files at all. Regardless of how you might feel about the price versus quality aspect, which I will get into a bit more with our next individual, this behavior of begging for more money and tips is just wrong. The thing some creators tend to forget is that tips are nice, but they are entirely optional. Not everyone can spare extra, especially for a $400 model commission. as long as the agreed upon price is paid for, it shouldn't really be an issue. Yet, there is very little the commissioner can do in this situation. The artist has all the files, and without the logs, it turns into a he said, she said. As annoying as it is to see Peyton here with a terrible commission, this story of how uncooperative Tosca can be sounds rather interesting, especially given how much she is for substance painter textures and the like. I do believe our next individual may help us figure out why this is the case. Individual 5 happens to be another previous commissioner of Tosca. Thankfully, this is a commissioner who did receive their product in the end, just like Peyton. However, this is only because another client threatened to cancel their own commission. Rin explains that they were looking everywhere for a custom VR chat model, eventually finding themselves on Tosca's Fiverr page for her model commissions. They found the price tag and promised turnaround time to be a great deal and liked the portfolio she had. And so, they began discussing all the details through Discord. Yet, when the commissioner asked for updates later on, Tosca became unresponsive. That is until Rin's husband began a PayPal dispute for his own project around the same time, leading to Tosca holding the files hostage unless Rin's husband removed the PayPal dispute. Keep in mind, Rin and their husband's projects were separated, meaning whatever decisions happened for one project shouldn't really affect the other. Regardless, they eventually canceled the dispute and received a single file for the model, the Unity package. This Unity package has tons of issues with it, barring the obvious ones such as the SDK. From the bones, eyes, and even textures being broken and unusable. And similar to Peyton's commission from before, it was an edited Shiba in disguise. Which I should briefly mention doesn't work in this case due to the design having a very long tail. So in the end, Rin and their husband avoided any more commissions because of this experience alone. And since that time, they did try to fix it, but it's just a lost cause at the end of the day. So we have ourselves yet another commissioner who did receive their product in the end, but it was not as advertised and was only given because of something else. That being Rin's husband issuing a PayPal dispute for his project, despite the two being separate commissioners. The one thing I hadn't realized up to this point was the aforementioned Fiverr page. At the time of this video, all of the projects are all on pause, though it does show that anyone who comes across the page can look the commissioner, similar to commissioning Tosca through her Discord server, even if the prices haven't really been adjusted yet. As you've seen with Maverick, Peyton, Rin, and even the Shiba retexture commissioners, these commissions are a gamble between being scammed out of money or being given something worse than what was originally advertised. Remember, this is what people are expecting with their $400 custom model commission, a quality comparable to the model pictures that are found on the Fiverr page. Telling people that they should expect less doesn't exactly work in this case. Karabo is yet another commissioner, one that Peyton and another friend of mine were kind enough to point me towards. Although, there wasn't really much that could be gathered from their commission experience, mostly as it's been a few years since then and it's difficult for them to recall it. They've also noted having worked on some of Tosca's models for a while, explaining there were a number of UV and texture related issues that were present. Yet, this was back in the early days of the first Shiba edits Tosca had made. And the model work in question were personal edits which they gave to a few people. So for Karabo, there isn't much notable outside of being a commissioner, as well as noting how these issues seem to still be present in current models. What I did receive though was another addition towards proving the Shiba edit rumor, mentioning that Akatsuki, our next individual, dissected many of Tosca's models within Blender, as well as being very well over her past when it came to her editing Pika Pidi Shiba. While there was very little we could gather from Karabo regarding previous interactions, I felt mentioning them would certainly help to corroborate our next individual, one who seems to have quite a number of words in regards to Tosca. Our last individual is the aforementioned Akatsuki, who, aside from Maverick, seems to have quite the history with Tosca, as well as a lot of knowledge on the modeling side of things. Akatsuki starts off by explaining how Tosca's history within the Shiba community began, mostly from how she had made a fox and wolf edit of the original Shiba, an edit that was enjoyed by many, but did raise a number of concerns. As we know by now, Wikipedia is quite fine when it comes to these types of edits, though at the time, and with how early VRChat was, this was a rather big topic. At the very least, these edits were available for patrons of Wikipedia just like the Shiba itself. Another point that was brought up was the feet asset that Tosca used, stating that these were indeed an asset that was being reused over and over, even helping to corroborate Maverick's story of his feet being reused. The last thing to really mention is Akatsuki's involvement with Tosca's modeling work, as it mostly started from noticing a lot of glaring issues with the UV mapping and texture work. It was apparently enough to catch the attention of Tosca as well, as they were approached like many other individuals for texture work, supposedly wanting to use this texture as the main one for the model she sells. Though, most who are approached are quick to notice the UV job and material use. There are other situations and issues that Akatsuki addresses in these messages, although most of these are more of sour opinions or unrelated elements, such as the person who has made themselves a moderator within Tosca's server. Having a history of VRChat and for affinity bands so large, they have a wiki for an article describing many of their previous actions, and even having been suspended from Twitter at the time of this recording. Of course, this is all unrelated to the current topic. The big takeaway with Akatsuki though is the Shiba edit rumor, stretching out the model assets in order to hide the fact it's been edited, which would explain why at a glance it's very hard to disprove it as an edit. You would need to put them side by side to really get a good picture on this rumor, which we thankfully did earlier with Zane's help. Still though, relying on an outdated model feels pretty weird. While that was indeed the last individual today, we thankfully have ourselves a lot of details to work with. So, I think it's time we went over everything we've seen so far before giving my own thoughts on the matter at hand. Tosca began as a creator who made various edits for a popular VRChat model at the time, even offering retexture commissions for anyone within Wikipedia's Discord server. However, a number of these individuals were scammed out of money through various means, usually by not receiving a decent job like advertised, or receiving nothing at all. Around that same time, a number of users offered their support for her model edits, attempting to fix certain mistakes and one even offering their assets to use with it. However, some of these individuals received little in the way of credit or compensation, while fine for some, others offered their assistance under the prospect of this credit. This wasn't an issue back when these edits were available for owners of the original model. Now, however, a number of these assets are being used in VRChat avatars for $30 each. We're using the same high poly assets for many of the newer models, by merely stretching out parts to hide the fact it's been changed around, allowing Tosca to crank out models left, right, and center, which is apparently even used for custom model commissions as well, seeing as most of these commissions are rather identical in nature. That's at least the story I was able to gather from all the info provided. There are parts I could be missing, or entirely wrong on, but one thing is certainly clear. Tosca's behavior is very abhorrent towards commissioners and model creators alike. Even if you yourself might not really care about Tosca's commissions, especially when you have the option to buy a base model for just $30, that doesn't mean others shouldn't care either. Relying on base models may work as a start thanks to their ease of use, but what if you wanted to break away from that mold that the base model brings to everyone? For a price of about $400 and a really slow turnaround time, it looks extremely promising, especially in comparison to most who charge upwards of $800 or more for custom models. Though, as you might have seen with those who previously commissioned her, the experience can be less than stellar with the risk of receiving nothing at all. And as we've discussed in the beginning, their base models aren't safe from having problems either, most of which resulting in the community having to fix mistakes to actually make it work, such as the UV mapping, the typology of the hands, or even the armature. While it is very much easy to fix a "Buy on Gumroad" watermark on the back of a jacket, other issues can't exactly be fixed just by the community alone, such as the numerous business practices Tosca implies through her models. The cherry on top is that Tosca is very quick to express her need for money due to her disability, often saying that because of this disability, she can't actually work a real job, making all of these models and commissions important for her as they're her only source of income. This went as far as Tosca creating a Twitter thread going in great detail on what this means, from skeletal issues that make physical activities extremely difficult for her, to even epilepsy that has left her nearly blind in one eye, meaning that she can't drive. And when rumor came out that someone was searching up dirt regarding her disability, Tosca made yet another Twitter thread describing in detail what this means. I do give credit for her coming out and explaining it, even if it was rather aggressive. Also, I won't argue in regards to whether this is true or false due to it being a lot more of a personal issue, but what I will say is that this doesn't excuse outright scamming individuals out of their money. Instead, it makes it look as if it's being used to deflect criticism or beg for pity. As seen when a user made a simple comment that they felt the $30 price tag was overpriced, a simple misunderstanding of not realizing that the model in question was essentially a 3-in-1, yet the issue was pushed to the point of mentioning their disability. This brings us to a question that I haven't really touched on. Should you support Tosca, a creator who, on the surface, provides very cute looking models for a rather fair price, making them perfect for anyone new or experienced when it comes to VR chat avatars? Though, underneath all of that, are rather anti-consumer in their practices and behavior, using planned obsolescence to take advantage of long-term buyers for continued support, while also refusing to acknowledge or assist with common issues or complaints. Dig even further than that, as done in this video, and you'll come up face to face with a creator who isn't afraid to outright scam people, only correcting their mistake when at risk of getting in trouble or losing money. To make matters worse, they're willing to steal from fellow model creators, with many of Tosca's current models being an amalgamation of parts and assets, leading to most realizing they're just buying a glorified Frankenstein made to look pretty. There's even evidence that Tosca claims these assets as fully hers, as seen when offering her leg assets to the Sims 4 modders for their anthromods, mostly after stretching things to fit the anatomy better, of course. It's due to all the information I've been given that I myself can't exactly support Tosca. Not only is there a ton of risk when it comes to attempting to purchase base models, but this is a creator willing to steal, hide information, and scam people for profit, which is one of the reasons she is often very much disliked by others, with some communities even making her out to be a meme of sorts for that reason, likely given her behavior, questionable business practices, or even previous interactions. While I don't wish to support or endorse Tosca, I don't outright hate or despise her. To be fair though, I haven't been scammed or stolen from like most of the individuals today, but I really admire her skills when it comes to 3D texturing. She has a unique art style that I think allows her to stand out rather well, and it's why I was eager to take a look at her catalog at the time. At least, until multiple issues sort of ruined that, of course. However, my respect for them has certainly fallen since then, especially with their most recent action of releasing the Phoenix Ultimate, another iteration of the Phoenix avatar, when the previous one has only been out for 7 months. Meaning previous buyers have to buy the model once again if they want updates, or find a way to update themselves. How many times must people be expected to keep buying these updates for the same model, especially when they look visually identical and there are few words on what has exactly changed? You're essentially expected to keep buying these updates when they appear or you're wasting money, further leading to the idea that all of Tosca's models are always planned for obsolescence, so that a new version can roll around in a few months and invalidate the previous version. Which is likely the case if it is true she is utilizing others' assets to speed up the process, as seen with the Felician, a cat version of the Rexolium which is released a month after the Rexolium devolved, rather than making the cat version first with the original Rexolium features included later on. It's a never-ending cycle of drawing new users into what she offers through the design, using the questionable business practices to draw in purchases for the short term, and using the planned obsolescence to milk long-term buyers. It's rather ridiculous. As for if you yourself should stop supporting Tosca, that's ultimately up to you. After all, No one has control over what you decide to do with your own money. All I can really do is help others in making an informed decision. And if that means you wish to continue supporting them while aware of the situation, that's okay. You shouldn't be bashed for supporting someone who people might not agree with. As long as you yourself are happy with the purchase, that's all that really matters. There's even ways to enjoy Tosca's work for those hesitant to support her, as many of her models have public versions on both VRChat and even Neos VR to try out, usually avoiding most of the purchase-specific issues, including the lack of Photoshop files. It's also listed in the TOS of many of Tosca's models, encouraging this, and there's even a public VR chat role for this reason, made by Tosca, meaning it is very much possible to still enjoy her avatars. Of course, I don't wish to try and claim that everything shared here today is set in stone. As such, it would be nice to receive Tosca's input regarding many of the claims presented. She doesn't have to respond, of course, and can even ignore everything said here if she wanted, though I believe it is in her best interest given everything here in this video. As a creator who wishes to provide a service, people are putting their money, patience, and even trust into you, expecting you to return a product with the same quality you advertise. Instead, Tosca returns the favor by being uncooperative and unresponsive, at best giving the commissioner a half-baked product, and at worst, nothing at all, only correcting themselves when at risk of losing money or getting in trouble. And if we ignore commissioners and custom models, we've seen business practices that show a focus on taking advantage of buyers, ensuring that anyone can be nickel and dimed if they attempt to support her. There's also plenty of questions and concerns that stem from what was shared today. Why did she attempt to steal and resell someone else's model? Why has she not credited Maverick for his assets, despite still using them potentially? Why are commissioners not allowed to receive certain files for their models? And the list goes on and on. This video has been difficult to make. I don't mean that this video had a lot of roadblocks that would have made it impossible, but rather, it's been difficult for me to make a video on this topic specifically. I create videos as I wish to help others whenever I can, providing information and helping people stay informed on certain topics. This is one of the few videos I've made actually focusing on an individual's actions. I ultimately wish to see the good in others and end with good intentions, usually giving a critique on what they've done and offering ways to fix it, as I do believe there are some people who have the capacity to change when given a hand. However, it's extremely difficult to try and do that here with how far the situation has gotten. Treating commissioners like kids who are ripe to be stolen from with no way to fight back, while stealing assets from fellow creators like they own everything, all the while using their community to fix mistakes and pump out the same asset multiple times. It's a continuous cycle that they entrap others into for as long as possible. I am very much the last person to be talking about a creator's shady actions, especially one I once respected, as I'm rather soft when it comes to my thoughts and opinions on things, often with the intention of wanting to forgive the person in some way. Creating 3D models that are ready to work within VRChat is honestly pretty cool. It's a lot of work as well, since it can take many months to create just one model. So when I saw their catalog a year ago while scrolling on VRC Arena, I respected them. That respect has been difficult to keep up with though, as more information came to light. It started out with just bad business practices which seemed like an easy fix, leading to me making a video that I ultimately thought could help. Now, here we are, with stealing assets and scamming commissioners coming to light. And despite that video critique being made, the bad business practices continue, with the Phoenix Ultimate being the final nail in the coffin for me. It has even proved difficult to suggest potential fixes for Tosca, such as more transparency with model updates, as they ultimately can't fix things like the broken trust from many or her previous actions. All that can be done is apologizing to everyone and going from there. So, why did I do it? Why go through all this effort for a topic I have very little involvement in, even though I was aware of the risk involved? Well, it was originally a matter of wanting to help a few people get their voice heard, offering a platform where they have the anonymity and freedom to speak without fear. Yet, as more individuals share their experiences, things slowly changed. I wanted to help everyone. Artists scamming their commissioners is a recurring issue on the internet. It can't be helped, and the only way to combat it is to not be afraid to speak up. As more individuals share their experiences and are made aware of it, the less this can happen for others. Yet, not every user has that luxury to speak up when the cards are stacked against them. They have to share identifying info and private messages that can give them away, whereas the artist can use methods to silence or fight against what are real claims. So for the longest time, most of Tosca's history was left in the dark for this reason. At least, until these 7 individuals were brave enough to speak up thanks to my previous video, especially the 4 who were stolen from and or scammed out of commission. It's for this reason I'm grateful to have had these people involved in creating this video, from artists, commissioners, and even friends I enjoy being around, as they're the reason this video was made in the first place. On that note, if you wish to help these fine individuals, I recommend sharing this video wherever you can. Many of the current individuals don't wish to get involved any more than they already have. As for some of them, this has been going on for more than 2 years at this point. We also can't forget that there are likely more individuals who were taken advantage of as well. If this video can reach them, they might be able to share with us some of their experiences, further helping us gather evidence that supports this rabbit hole of stealing assets and scamming commissioners. I myself had very little to gain for creating this video outside of helping my friends, so if you wish to like and subscribe, that would be very much appreciated. Let us hope that this will be the last time something like this has to be made on Tosca, and that improvements can be made to hopefully provide something amazing for the community. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video is worth the time to stick with me the whole way through.